Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We're going to talk about Feng Shui today. And I know we all have this perception of what Feng Shui is, but it's probably not exactly what you're thinking. And we're also going to take that and also translate it into what you're doing outside your house, or at least a part of it. Aelita Leto joins us, and she's a master at Feng Shui. I've learned so much over the last couple of weeks with you, and also with Chinese astrology too. Aelita, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you, Steve, for having me. Love our sessions on a regular basis.
Yeah, there's so much to learn. And, you know, even the Chinese culture is so rich, richer than I ever thought. And I learned even so far, even on the astrology side, how powerful it is. When it comes to Feng Shui, our gardens, I know we're getting halfway into the year now. Summer's about to start very soon. You can use the power of Feng Shui for your garden as well, right?
Well, even more. If you know that we talked before, the Feng Shui is about the land, is about our connection to the space in time, right? And in philosophically speaking, you know, why would people go to the garden? And why even, especially in a Chinese or Asian communities, why would you go to something that it's going back to something that doesn't change? You go back to stop the time. And especially can be revealed when when I hear helping, or, you know, as a docent or a tour guide at the local Japanese gardens. And I always think observing, it doesn't take any flowers to be replanted. It doesn't take anything, things that for hundreds of years stay in the same kind of the human proportion to the human way to entering and walking the path. And they can go back and say, you know what, 50 years ago or 20 years ago or last season, they come to the same landscape. It's like coming back to the nature.
Give me an example of that. Are we talking about the things that are growing, or people are going back to it?
People go, so the garden, typically the garden, you come to the heart. The garden is your soul, your garden, your inner state, something very intimate. And this is what makes it Asian perspective or Chinese perspective, looking at in the East and West, the gardens are expressed differently. Like I think in a Western cultures or in Europe, for example, gardens represent power. Everything is like, you know, symmetrically appealed. It's meticulously arranged, right? You're controlling the physical, you're controlling the nature. Where in Japanese garden or Chinese garden way is that we work with the nature. We are the nature. We allowing these kind of natural, allowing to integrate, let's say, man-made structure or sculpture or, you know, some kind of the organization, but it's never symmetrical. That's what the dreams of the dance of the yin and yang. When it creates like, you know, pivots your way of you walking the garden, and it's you see the maybe distant view, but you cannot rush directly. You have to go left or right. It's something that is intriguing and intimate, and at the same time revealing itself. You always have a choice. You know, you have a bigger opening or a smaller passage to it. So there's always like the fluidity of the yin and yang and play with that dark, light, high, low, you know, hard, soft. It's at every angle, you know, when you visit the kind of classical gardens. So I think this is just culturally in the West or in Europe, it was really more expressing of power and control. You know, when the columns are symmetrical, wherein the things are put apart, and you already know that's been arranged, it doesn't happen in a nature in its own course.
But is that okay? You know, if we've arranged it, or woman has rearranged the garden and it's not growing naturally, as if you were just walking through the woods. Is that still okay?
Yeah, but okay, maybe maybe I will paraphrase that. Let's imagine in your room, you have a art, a painting of a landscape, and it
Okay.
inspires or connects you to, to your favorite place in land or your favorite kind of home or your place of birth. It's
Okay.
not that it's in a painting. It's just that, it's in a frame and on your wall. And now you can think about in a backyard, you have a land and it's not neglected, but you replicating a miniature garden that is arranged in such a way that you, by stepping into it, you can actually feel like carried away, and you can be in that meditative state, and you can be like feeling I'm with the nature. Anytime we take care of a plant, we expressing our kindness and nurturing capacity because we care. So it's like a love and care, cultivating love and care. So anytime we invest time in the garden, it's already connection to the nature. Is it control? I think this is what she gives back to us. In a larger scale, as I said, the emperors and maybe queens and kings in Europe, that was more like really expressing how much power they have, right? Where traditionally the Asian gardens were more about, of course, land was scarce, but it was more like generating light and opening the, bringing the family together, or creating, courtyard houses and having a garden at the end. That was the intimate space where you do connect, go meditate, feel, connection to the divine. So there's different purpose to that.
Do you seek out nature in certain aspects to become whole again?
All the time. We
Yeah.
are nature all the time. I think, but just recently when I went to Moab, when I went to the hiking the mountains, the hills, or soaking in these ice cold melted melted snow water creeks, and just the feeling of the livelihood. People are nature. We have to ground ourselves. I think there's even this specific therapy for elders, just to do touch and massage, or just to do planting and just work with earth. Actually, yesterday, I just remember yesterday, my daughter and I, we were replanting the succulents, the baby succulents, we were replanting in the smaller pots, and just the giving the nurturing aspect. It's a manifestation of, of divine. Because all I can do is I can just hold and cultivate. I cannot grow for itself. I can only support. And I think that's also a very important aspect too.
I think even psychologically, when we do things outside with a garden, we know that what we're doing is going to flourish and grow. Whether you're just trimming something or whatever you're doing, even if you're pruning a rose bush, you're helping it grow better and perpetuate and flourish. And in my mind, that's kind of what we all want to do, in some regard.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can ask one thing. I just have one of my notes and I'm going to show it to you. But this is a character for garden. Do you see that?
You raise it up just a little bit. Yep. I got you. Yeah.
Right here, right? So the character of the garden is made of the main 4 characters of the radicals. And that's one of them is the enclosed space, right? Then you have, so the enclosed space, the wall. So it means something is private. Something that you come to it is like, is isolated, right? Then the other radical is earth or soil. Okay, right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the top. That is like, again, when you can add the earth, the soil, the rocks, the building, the sculptures, any other, the representation of the mountains. Then under that is the space, right? The next radical is the space that usually relates to a body of water or something that you walk around. So like we think about a pond or a lake, or it could be just a water feature, but you don't go directly, you walk around in the space. And the third, or the last radical, okay, is that resonates with grass, plants, shrubs, or flowers, or trees and people. So this means for everybody to connect, to walk around, to experience. So the yuan, the one name, are the garden in a Chinese, are complexity of all these four, which is enclosed space, that you experience the earth, the water, you walk around, you meander around, and you have experience to it.
Interesting. Like that. There's a synergy between everything. It's not just randomly.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. So, and it's just very important that the garden is also in Chinese culture. It's not only is just a piece of land, but it's also allows us to think, opens up your heart in a way that you're not only your physical body, but your spirit body. You go to the garden, you contemplate, or you go to self-reflect. I remember when I was traveling to Beijing, and in the Imperial Garden in Beijing, there was on the pedestal in the garden, and in their garden was this enormous rock. And within the rock, it was the image, the image in itself was related to the founder of Taoism, I guess, or like, so one of the like philosophical kind of I guess people. It was not exactly like handmade, but it was just pulled, like found that rock with that image and was placed as an initiative to think about the way. So they were giving an initiative to the emperor to actually think in now I remember, it was a Confucius. It was like the image of the Confucius. Confucius would have the sense of how to live in a society, how to live in a community. To like even you as an emperor are sent kind of son of God to rule the country, but you have also a certain terms or certain behavior, kind of giving you the outline of the rules, how you could become a best ruler.
This is fascinating how deep this goes, because
It does.
We take it for granted. You go to a garden, you go to an arboretum, wherever it might be, and there's a lot of thought and strategy. Do you go to some of those and do you look at it and say, why did they put that there? How come they didn't do it that way?
Just recently I went, and I highly recommend, if you ever on the West Coast in LA area, is the Huntington Library Gardens, which is the amazing grounds of not only Japanese garden and Chinese garden and the Shakespeare and Rose Garden, and you name it. I mean, it's like more than it's a large property. And the Chinese gardens is actually a replica of one of the gardens from China, where even the rockery is brought, when you can experience the moon gates, when you can experience the bonsai way of how you grow in a pot and where you place it, the high and low, you walk around the lake and pond. So many like elements are integrated that you can experience. I mean, not being in China for the last 2 years, for me is like really stepping it back into the ground and experiencing. And what's fascinates is that the elements are so simple, right? But the strategy of placement, how to create a focal point, how to frame things, or how to contain things in the vast open space is the art. Because sometimes you think like, well, put a green lawn, it's very easy. But how you can make the small same green lawn becomes your stepping ground that you can actually imagine, that you can be inspired. So in my practice, many times when I look at when people do do create their garden, I'm giving them a meaning. Why?
So you're asking before you even begin to build a garden,
Yeah.
why are you doing it?
Yeah,
Hmm,
why?
okay.
What is the inspirational part? And then also like revealing like how you bring the yin and yang. Like for example, very classically, classical rules is that you put the evergreen or residual tree in one side and a dragon side, and then you have like maybe a maple or something like we shows the leaves and changing like a yin side on
Mhm.
the left side. So masculine, feminine, the dance of that all the time. Something like a rock as the natural rock, and then the sculpture of the lantern, which is again nature made, man made, yin and
Wow.
yang. Then you say you can be the one side of the your path could be higher and rockery, where the other one could be very linear, right? Not so you again adding element, yin and yang. So I think that's what makes it why sometimes the gardens do feel good, is that when we having a ability to express the yin and yang qualities.
See, these are things that all of us take for granted that you know about and you see, because I would never thought of that. But as you're saying it, it's like crystal clear. Like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Something masculine, something not next to each other, and the man-made sculpture and just the rock. Um, Subconsciously, it just seems like it's right, but we don't know why because we don't know. We don't know the principles behind it.
So yes, sometimes also to empower, you can also give a name. I'll give you example. I have one of my clients where we're working on their company kind of front lawn, and they just for the simplicity of all things, they would say, "Oh, I just want to, very clean piece of grass right in front of it." And then I look at the compass reading and I look at the compass direction, and
Hmm.
it's northeast. And northeast, then we correlate to gun, which is the mountain or mountain ranges. And as you know, in California, we have a beautiful Sierras in northeast. And since this is a family business and the main door is the northeast, and then I said, well, how come maybe it will be good? And I suggested, let's bring go and select a beautiful rock that you would compose, you think that your building is built around this rock. Because it's a rock is also the connection to the ancestral chi. Rock's been here forever,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And God forbid of the earthquake, right? What's going to be as the landform was going to stay? It's going to be the rock is going to what stays behind. So the conference room of the front was also in alignment with that green lawn. So what we did as a suggestion was that creating a little hump, like in a green thing, and placing the rock like emerging with that landscape. So now when the boss or when the owner sits at the conference room, he's in aligned with his rock. And after that, he even gave the name to the rock. So he not only had a physical connection by selecting it and placing it and empowering, because he like envisions the stability and kind of, being there as a family business for a long time and
Mm-hmm.
say, I'm not going anywhere, right? And that kind of reliability, but also get his personal emotional connection with this specific giving name. So you can do a lot of things, right?
Yeah, and as I learn it and we learn it from you, and as I would look at it this way too, that he is the rock.
Mhm.
So he
Yeah,
should see the rock when he looks out his window.
right. And if
Right?
it's, it has a personal qualities. It's just that, so when you create a garden, there's could be, inspirationally, the fairy gardens, you can name it. It's this like you definitely I mean, in Asian culture, when we create a garden, it's like a gardener's writing a poetry, it telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like like a Huntington library garden, like Chinese garden, that was definitely a love story. Because when you reach the highest point of that garden, and you can see that was the garden of flowering of the fragrance. So it's all about was about the embracing and that was the really love story, because the man truly dedicated this garden to his love of his life, who passed. And then when I climbed the garden, the south part, the highest point, right across, you were seeing the mausoleum where she was resting.
Oh, wow.
And then in alignment even further, like, hundreds of miles, you can see the mountain range. So the alignment to that. So when you personalize, when you start understanding the inside story, it reveals so much power, so much love that is just.
Wow. And was that everything that was done there? Was it truly intentional, or did some of it happen by just chance? Like
I
we're
think
talking about
I think
all those elements.
so. The elements that, I mean, truly, we study the land. Even when you study the garden, you look at the sun, you look at the shades, you look at the, you look at the trees, the existing, existing landforms. And the best is the success is when you manage to embrace the existing landforms and enhance those. I mean, for me personally, when I work with the garden, is like always allowing to create a containment. How can you you reveal part of it, let's say 2/3 are enclosed and 1/3 is open, that your eye kind of like wonder what's there, becoming like a mystic. You want to have like an image, what is there? So you want to go, and then you want to walk into that specific space, and you forget that, but there's a house behind. You kind of stepping into a completely different world. I think that's what the kind of success of the garden is.
So let's say we're thinking about creating a garden, and I'm going to put to the side, if we could, the purpose of the garden. You just want something beautiful, but you also want something in synergy with nature and with Feng Shui properties. What's like one of the most important things to remember? Any tips, for somebody that's just, hey, I'm planning on going outside. I got the space over here. I'm going to do something with it. Or does it just varies? There's all different things to remember.
Yeah, it varies. Great question. It varies, of course, but a few tips I can give. First of all, you want to have a connection between outside and inside. So when you are inside, let's say sometimes, most of the times, it's like the garden is extension of your living room or family room, right? So I would say that there will be something, a transitional, like a moon gate, for example, is a very good transitional kind of gate or path, that when you are inside of your living room, then when you look out, there is a barrier, there's some kind of the line in between that is a transitions or enhances your interest to go further. Okay. The other key is like, if it's there's not much space, you can always have a focal point. Focal point is most important. The furthest and the highest and the deepest, like what is your ultimate focal point or destination? Sometimes it could be a waterfall, sometimes it could be a sculpture, sometimes it could be something, the element like a beautiful older tree. Sometimes it could be just a place when you walk as a distantly and you sit down. It depends, right? But the focal point is the final destination. And then you start breaking it up, that there's no linear, that you make that's meandering. You go around place and you get exposed to all the other areas accordingly. So I say the focal point, containment and openness, that there's a differentiation. Sometimes also choosing the trees, like you want to implement something like with like evergreen, which is a very young replication of always uplifting, rejuvenating, masculine, never, it's always green. It's just definitely is a life force. And then you want to show the feminine side, which is let's say like a maple, like a Canadian maple, like that shows the seasons, shows the letting go the leaves, or brings the color to the leaves, right? So there's always magnolia so magnolia will be like a young tree with the big juicy green leaves with a big bold white flowers during the spring. And then you want to have some like osmanthus, which is flavoring a beautiful aroma, smaller leaves like on a, so yin and yang in a continuous play. That would be a
Yeah.
suggestion.
You know what's interesting, as we're talking, I renovated my backyard, I don't know, like 7 years ago. I'm in the process of moving from that house. But I made a focal point and I didn't even think of it until you
Good,
just said it.
yeah.
And my focal point was I have a palm tree sort of in the middle of the backyard of the area, and it's on sand. And my thing is I love the beach and I love tropical. So I did it not even thinking of it, but that is, everybody looks that way and they look at the palm tree because it's standing up there and it's the middle, oh, it's not exactly in the middle, but it's a focal point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's important. Yeah, it's just good. It's a good, like, I wish I can take you for a tour and to
Love
show
that.
you the different elements. So maybe next time we can share a slideshow when I can show my just in case. So my website does have a latest article about the moon gates, and I talk about the garden design. So if you visit my website, you can learn more.
Yeah. Tell everybody your website. I know what's your name, but can you spell it out?
Yeah, it's www.aelitaleto.com, Aelita, Leto.com.
Yeah, there's a lot of great information, a lot of insight, and there's a reason things have been done for decades, centuries, many, many thousands of years, because there's a principle behind it. And some things, you might walk in somebody's backyard and feel, wow, this just feels good, or somebody else's and just not get a vibe. You're just looking at some trees and grass. Well, there's a reason behind that, whether it was done intentionally or not. There's many principles behind it. Always fascinating. I love talking with you, Aelita. It's so interesting what can be done, and especially if we think about some of those principles.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody is interested, I can give you I have in my notes, right? There's 18 Chinese garden techniques. If
Oh, wow.
somebody would like to, yeah, then I'll pull out a few. So first of all, there's internal and external orientation. So always observe, where's the location, where's the sun, the shades, etc. Right? To see and be seen. A principle of subordinate with main point of interest. That's the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
Hidden and exposed. So allowing to be, hidden to some element and then exposed is basically by surprise. So that's why you make a turn, right?
Yep.
Clear guide and subtle hints. So there could be a clear guide to maybe a path, but maybe a hint of the sound of the waterfall that you don't see, but you engage all your senses. You engage your, it's a vital to the human.
It's almost like a tease, like we're teasing.
Yeah, it's a teasing. It's exact. You know what? To be honest, that's what it is. It's a dance. It's a dance of it's the feminine and masculine. It's almost going on a date. It's the feeling of the butterflies and searching and discovering and knowing and then feeling. So solid and void, the rhythmic, zigzag and meandering, high and low at random, looking up and looking down. So very easy technique. Sometimes when, not every view is perfect, right? And sometimes a very easy, good technique to avoid something that you want somebody not to look straight or up is creating the path that is maybe rockery or maybe not as clear to step, like you have to look down when you step down, right? So that's just a small technique, but those couple seconds, those couple feet forward will avoid something you don't want to look, because there's sometimes it's maybe a boring fence, right? So you're redirecting the view down, and then as soon as you kind of pass, you look up, and there's already next image.
They're telling me we're out of time. I could go on
forever.
And you know what?
Again.
Even talking to you, I wish I could redo my backyard with these principles. Came out pretty good, but there'd be things that I would do differently based on what you just said. Like this, I find this so much fun. Like if I was going to use those principles, because it's exciting. Like you're taking somebody on a walk through your area, and why not? The extra steps involved in doing that's going to be there for a long time, right?
Yeah, consult with me. I can help you out.
Yeah, so many great ideas and techniques. Leto.com is the website. Always great having you on, and look forward to getting together again sometime, and maybe we could show some pictures of some of the gardens next time.
Absolutely.
All right, great. All right, thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Steve.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.